According to ESPN, Justin Simmons has made the top safeties list as compiled by executives, coaches, scouts, and players from around the National Football League heading into the 2021 NFL season. We're going to break down a little bit more about why Justin Simmons is at that point and how he can maybe get to number one in 2021. I'm Cody Roark, host of Lockdown Broncos, and this is your Broncos Weekly Report.
You are Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Justin Simmons comes in at number 2 on ESPN's top safeties for the 2021 NFL season. Above him, Minkah Fitzpatrick of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And often at times, I feel like on Twitter, these two players are widely debated amongst fan bases. And look, Minkah Fitzpatrick, younger than Justin Simmons. Justin Simmons been in the game a little bit longer. Both are very talented players, don't get me wrong. But when we compare both players side by side in 2020, Minkah Fitzpatrick, he didn't have as many tackles as Justin Simmons did. He was more of that free safety type player. Justin Simmons, he played free. He also played coming down in the box against the run, being blitzed several times. And he had one more interception. Simmons had 5 interceptions in 2020 in comparison to Fitzpatrick's 4. Now, here's the deal. I think when you look at both of these players, everybody's always going to look at statistics. I think statistics, they have a little bit of a piece to the portion here. But the overall impact, and I think the value that players have in the National Football League for their team, I think speaks volumes. You look at Minkah Fitzpatrick, you take him off of that Pittsburgh Steelers defense, I think that they struggle. You take Justin Simmons off the Broncos defense on the back end, I think that they struggle as well. The value for both of these players to their teams respectively is very, very high at the safety position. I think that when we look at how we compare safeties, you want to look at players that can do a little bit of everything. Justin Simmons is a guy that can do it all. I think Minkah Fitzpatrick also has the level of versatility to do just that as well. But let's take a look at some of the other players that were on this list. At number 3, Budda Baker of the Arizona Cardinals. Obviously an impressive campaign in 2020. He's going to be a big part of their defense coming up here in 2021. At number 4, you have Jamal Adams of the Seattle Seahawks. He's awaiting a contract extension, but obviously there's some injury concerns for him. And when we talk about injury history for Adams, there's been concern about him being able to stay on the football field. So do the Seahawks really want to pay him that big time money with some of these concerns that are absolutely warranted? But when Jamal Adams is healthy, he's one of the best strong safeties in the NFL because he can line up inside the slot in the nickel. He'll blitz off the edge like an outside linebacker. He's a hard-hitting guy. He's a ball-hawking safety as well. He's very cerebral and smart. This is a really good list, and I think the fact that Justin Simmons is at number 2, I think speaks volumes to the respect that now he is getting amongst NFL executive circles. Like I mentioned, this was a survey that was conducted by ESPN that featured over 50-plus scouts, coaches, players, and general managers around the National Football League. So those people are paying attention to these players. And obviously, anytime we have these lists, it's very subjective, and you could always make an argument as to who should be higher, who should be lower. But I think that for the Broncos right here, Justin Simmons being at number 2, I think that's a sign of respect for where the Broncos may be, and specifically for what Simmons does at that position. Now, I think it's really important to get into the details about what defines how a safety changes things for an organization. I think that when you look at the stuff that players do on the field, that's the most evident factor. What they do off the field, I think also speaks volumes. But I think for Justin Simmons, he's the captain of that defense. He is the Broncos' cornerstone franchise player. And while the Broncos aren't on national TV too much, the fact that Simmons is getting some recognition, I think, is well-deserved for him based on his play and how much he has grown since the 2018 season. I've been very impressed with Justin Simmons' maturity and also his understanding of the game. I've had the privilege of speaking with him several times at practice. He sees the game a lot differently. He's a very cerebral guy, which is why Vic Fangio puts all of his trust in Simmons to get the Broncos adjusted. For example, if there's a formation change, if the Broncos are in one specific call pre-snap, you have a guy that motions or the formation changes, Justin Simmons is the guy that is screaming out the audible. He's echoing that to the inside linebackers. The inside linebackers are echoing that to the defensive line so that they can maybe shift their alignment, whether there's a 3-tech, a 1-tech. Sometimes you'll see that last-minute shift. A lot of that is communication that comes from Justin Simmons, and he's very ingrained in the film room. So I think that speaks volumes there. Harrison Smith comes in at number 5 for the Minnesota Vikings. AFC West Division rival Tyrone Matthew comes in at number 6. And I think that Tyrone Matthew could probably have an argument about being higher here on this list. He's been one of the most impressive players in the league from the safety position when he's been able to do with the Kansas City Chiefs. He's elevated them defensively. And I think if you take Tyrone Matthew off of that defense, I think they are a shell of themselves, and they are obviously worse off in that regard. Kevin Byard for the Tennessee Titans comes in at number 7. John Johnson II comes in for the Cleveland Browns at number 8. I think that Jesse Bates could be a little bit higher. Bates of the Cincinnati Bengals comes in at number 10. And then you have Derwin James Jr. coming in at number 9 for the Chargers. And the same thing for him. Injury concerns, I think, are a real legitimate gripe about him now. But when he is healthy, he is one of the best players in the NFL, one of the most athletic defensive backs in the game. So if Derwin James can stay healthy, which there's optimism here in 2021 for him, I think that he's going to be a dominant player. But it's up to Justin Simmons with his on-field play this year. I really believe with the Broncos additions in the secondary at cornerback, with also the defensive line with Von Miller, Bradley Chubb fully healthy, it gives him more of an opportunity to just play free and not have to worry too much, because he's got guys on the outside that can lock down their guys. And if need be, he can get over the top. He's going to be dropping down in some of those cover one robber situations, and he's going to be taking away anything that's coming across the middle of the field. He does a really good job of that. He sees it before almost anybody else. So obviously some love there for Justin Simmons on ESPN's top safeties heading into the 2021 NFL season. Honorable mention players: Eddie Jackson, Darnell Savage, Marcus May, Marcus Williams, and Antoine Winfield Jr., Landon Collins. Maybe you can make an argument too for Kareem Jackson. I don't think that Kareem has been talked about enough by members of the national media. Kareem Jackson, in my opinion, has been just as valuable and just as important to the Broncos defense as Justin Simmons. So while he may not get that recognition here on ESPN's list, he's going to get recognition on my list. He also gets recognition from other hosts around the AFC West here on the Locked On Podcast Network. So we're going to have you covered, ladies and gentlemen, on Monday with a brand new episode of the show. We're going to begin our Broncos defensive position preview heading into training camp, which is just about 2.5 weeks away. You can check out some of my latest articles over there, 9news.com. Go to the Broncos tab and you'll see some of my articles. We just did one on the Broncos secondary depth at cornerback and why it is a good problem to have. Plus, you get Locked On Broncos here on the YouTube channel every single day, Monday through Friday, not to mention other assorted video content. And the podcast is also available on your favorite audio podcasting platforms: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or the Odyssey app. But with that said, I'm Cody Roark, host of the show. We'll see you on Sunday at 4 p.m. Mountain Time for Monday's episode of Locked On Broncos. A little bit of an early drop for all you avid listeners all across Broncos country.